They say the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. But for 19-year-old Melody Pearson, her flight from Atlanta to Los Angeles was about to unravel a hidden tale of prejudice, injustice, and long-guarded secrets. As she boarded the gleaming Delta Airlines Boeing 767, she was just another black girl, inconspicuous in simple jeans and a hoodie, yet carrying a past far from ordinary. On this flight, an unsuspecting flight attendant would push the limits of discrimination, hurling them both into a storm of moral reckoning. The truth? Melody was not merely a passenger. She was the CEO's daughter in disguise. Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport buzzed with its usual frantic energy. Flight announcements echoed across the terminal as travelers rushed with luggage and coffee cups in hand. Lines at security snaked through roped barricades, fraught with emotions and occasional cheerful banter about upcoming adventures. Families, business people, and eager vacationers converged under the bright fluorescent lights, each one with a unique story that would carry them thousands of feet into the sky. Amid the crowd, 19-year-old Melody Pearson took a deep breath. She gazed briefly at a large digital screen showing departure times, found her flight number, DL, to Los Angeles, and began her walk toward Gate B22. She might have looked, at first glance, like any other college-aged passenger traveling in a light hoodie, dark jeans, and sneakers. But the untrained eye would never guess the significance hidden in the pass stored on her phone, nor the identity she bore. For Melody Pearson was not just any passenger. She was the only daughter of Anthony Pearson, the relatively new but highly respected CEO of Delta Airlines, a man who had implemented sweeping reforms in the airline's corporate culture and worked tirelessly for inclusive values. Melody's mother, Clarissa, had raised her in a protective yet unpretentious environment. Clarissa believed that humility was a virtue, and that the privilege of wealth should never become a wall separating a person from empathy or the broader human experience. And so, despite her father's lofty position, Melody had grown up with minimal fanfare, attending public school, going shopping at ordinary stores, and rarely making use of the private flights her father could have easily arranged. This time, though, there was an unspoken family agreement that she would quietly observe how Delta's frontline employees treated everyday passengers. Anthony had suggested a low-key, incognito flight, hoping to gather real feedback on their service. Melody eagerly accepted, excited and a bit anxious to see the truths that might unfold. Gate B22 seethed with a throng of travelers. Businessmen sporting suits tapped away at laptops. A group of high school students wearing matching t-shirts for a volunteer trip chatted excitedly. A mother struggled to keep her toddler from racing off. As Melody found an empty seat, she eyed the flight attendants approaching the gate, all immaculate in crisp uniforms and neat hairdos. She wondered if any of them might treat her differently because of her appearance. Or would everything go smoothly, as her father's reformed corporate culture had intended? Among the flight attendants, Melody's eyes were drawn to a tall, blonde woman in her mid-30s. She was impeccably groomed, hair pinned in a tidy bun, lipstick precisely applied, and her uniform pressed to perfection. Her name tag read, Lauren Reed. Lauren exuded a sense of authority, casually but confidently conversing with her colleagues. Her presence was just as commanding as that of a manager overseeing a busy restaurant. Melody recalled the numerous training sessions Delta conducted on diversity and inclusion. She had even attended one as a volunteer, but a strange twinge in her stomach made her wonder how well Lauren Reed had actually absorbed those lessons. When the boarding process began, the usual routine ensued. First-class passengers and those with special assistance or frequent flyer status entered first, followed by the main cabin boarding zones. Melody fell into Zone 2, but she didn't mind the extra weight or the possibility of limited overhead bin space. She was determined to blend in naturally. When her time came, she handed over her boarding pass to the gate agent, who welcomed her with a standard, polite smile. Nobody recognized her as the CEO's daughter. On the jet bridge, she felt a mix of excitement and nerves. She was determined not to reveal her identity, but hoped she could glean real insights into how the cabin crew treated passengers from different backgrounds. She pictured her father's encouraging nod, his supportive words. Just be yourself. You never know what you might learn. Little did she know that this flight would not only test her composure, but also unravel the shocking prejudice one flight attendant still harbored beneath the polished exterior. Melody's life was about to take a turn that no corporate diversity workshop could have fully prepared her for. Upon entering the Boeing 767, Melody was greeted by a smiling attendant posted near the cockpit door, double-checking boarding passes. This attendant, Alicia, was radiant with warmth. Her eyes crinkled in genuine welcome when she spoke. "Good morning, welcome aboard," she said to Melody, with a friendly tone. Melody flashed a grateful smile. "Morning." She found her seat in the main cabin, 21A, a window seat. The seat was comfortable enough, but Melody was admittedly used to more spacious settings. Still, she was there for the experience, to see how the economy class traveler lived their flight from boarding to touchdown. She settled in, put her small carry-on under the seat, and watched as other passengers filtered in. Shortly thereafter, a subtle hush fell when Lauren Reed, the same blonde flight attendant from earlier, appeared and began making routine checks, ensuring overhead bins were closed properly. Seats were stowed in the upright position, and that nothing obstructed the aisle. Melody sensed a meticulous, almost rigid tension in Lauren's posture, as if her uniform were a kind of armor that she wore to maintain control. Something about her careful, disinterested scanning of passengers set Melody on edge. Nearby, an older couple fidgeted, softly muttering about overhead space. A father tried to calm a fussy baby. Across the aisle, a young man with headphones and a bright red sweatshirt was bobbing his head to music only he could hear. As more passengers settled, the mundane pre-flight rituals played out around them. Seatbelt demonstrations, adjustments of seat cushions, the opening and perusal of in-flight magazines. Melody glanced at her phone for a moment, confirming that she was still connected to Wi-Fi for a last-minute message to her mother. "Boarded safely. Love you." Moments later, Lauren stepped forward to make the usual announcements, her voice resonating through the cabin speakers. She delivered the lines in a tight, practiced tone, with the typical "Welcome aboard Delta Airlines Flight 1187 to Los Angeles" script. Melody watched intently, noticing no softness or warmth in her manner. It wasn't necessarily rude, but the difference between Lauren's mechanical courtesy and Alicia's genuine warmth was startling. As the aircraft pushed back from the gate, engines rumbling beneath the cabin's floor, Melody felt her heartbeat quicken. This was more than a flight. It was a test of real-life attitudes. She stared out the window, glimpsing the sunlit runways, planes from different airlines taxiing in the distance. The flight attendants systematically walked the aisles, ensuring seat belts were fastened. Lauren spoke to the father with the baby across the aisle in a hurried, borderline dismissive tone. But then she pasted on a polished smile for a businessman in a suit, speaking to him with a faint but noticeable courtesy that was absent moments before. Melody fought the urge to roll her eyes. Could it be favoritism based on perceived status, or just plain impatience with a fussy baby? She tried not to draw conclusions yet. After all, flight attendants had tough jobs, managing a plane full of passengers with all manner of demands and temperaments. Nonetheless, an uneasy feeling nestled in her gut. She wondered if Lauren singled out certain people based on appearance or personal bias. And if so, how would she treat Melody, a young black woman traveling alone? 40 minutes into the flight, beverage service began. Alicia and Lauren maneuvered the narrow aisles with the snack cart, distributing drinks and peanuts or cookies to the passengers. Melody watched from her seat as Alicia kindly asked each row for their preference, offering alternatives for those with allergies or dietary restrictions. Lauren, on the other hand, seemed to have an overly brisk manner. "What do you want to drink?" She swiftly poured it without waiting for the passenger to gather their thoughts. Then she moved on, a forced smile flickering like a faulty light bulb. By the time they reached row 21, Alicia greeted Melody warmly. "Hello, what can I get you to drink?" Melody smiled back. "Just water, please." Alicia nodded and carefully handed her a plastic cup with cool water. "Here you go. Would you like some peanuts or cookies?" "Cookies, thanks," Melody said. She was about to open the packet when Lauren suddenly leaned over, eyeing Melody. "You have to keep your tray table clear," Lauren said, pointing to the small tray that Melody had rested her water on. "I'll come back for trash later." "It's okay, I'll hold on to it," Melody replied, a bit puzzled. Everyone else was using their tray tables for drinks without an issue. She observed rows ahead of her. Passengers had their drinks and snacks on their tray tables just fine. Lauren didn't respond directly. Instead, she simply pursed her lips, gave a curt nod, and walked off with the cart behind Alicia. Melody felt that prickly sensation of being singled out for no apparent reason. She looked around, confirming that other passengers were indeed leaving their cups on their tray tables. Shrugging it off, she decided not to let it bother her. Yet she couldn't shake a nagging question in the back of her mind. Was she imagining things, or had Lauren displayed some bias? About an hour later, the plane hit mild turbulence. The pilot's voice crackled through the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Lewis speaking. We're expecting some light to moderate chop over the next half hour due to weather patterns. Please remain seated with your seat belts fastened until we turn off the fasten seatbelt sign." "Thank you." Melody secured her seatbelt. She found turbulence mildly unsettling, but had flown enough times that it no longer terrified her. A quick glance around revealed some anxious faces. The father with the baby pressed the infant to his chest, humming softly to soothe the child. The older couple in the row behind looked at each other with concern. Some passengers audibly sighed in frustration, presumably unhappy about being restricted to their seats. As the plane gently bumped and jolted, Melody felt a familiar wave of queasiness. "Water," she told herself, taking small sips. Alicia walked swiftly down the aisle to check seatbelts, her face calm and reassuring. Lauren, trailing behind, wore a stern expression, glancing more at the overhead compartments than at the passengers. Melody could see the tension in Lauren's jaw, as though annoyance radiated from her at having to do these checks. Maybe she just hated turbulence, Melody reasoned. But the question about possible hidden prejudice still lingered. The turbulence eventually lessened, and the fasten seatbelt sign was switched off. Passengers resumed reading, sleeping, or watching in-flight entertainment. A few used the opportunity to visit the lavatories. Melody noticed a line forming near the bathrooms at the front of the economy cabin. She felt a slight urge to stretch her legs and decided to walk to the back, suspecting shorter lines. Perhaps she could discreetly observe how the attendants treated people in these small but telling interactions. She made her way down the aisle. As she approached the rear galley area, she found Alicia assisting an elderly passenger. Meanwhile, Lauren stood near the rear bathrooms, rummaging through a supply cart. Melody gave Lauren a polite nod and stepped toward the open bathroom door. Instantly, Lauren's hand shot out, blocking Melody's path. Her eyes flicked down to take in Melody's casual attire, then up again, a flicker of disdain in them. "Excuse me," she began, her voice lower now, no longer channeling the forced professional courtesy. "These are not the bathrooms you should be using." A hot wave of shock and confusion surged through Melody. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize there was an assigned bathroom." She tried to keep her voice calm, though her chest tightened. Lauren's eyes narrowed. "These are for our premium economy and business class passengers," she said, gesturing up the aisle dismissively. "You can use the ones in the back or the middle of the aircraft." That was a blatant lie. There were no separate premium bathrooms in the economy section. Melody knew that. Anyone who has flown more than once knows standard lavatories in main cabin can be used by anyone, especially if they are physically accessible. "I'm seated in economy," Melody replied politely, trying to hold her temper. "And this is the economy lavatory area, isn't it?" Lauren sighed dramatically, folding her arms. "Well, I'm telling you, we'd prefer you use the other ones closer to your seat." She glanced around, her face tense. "We're busy here." Melody's heart pounded in anger and embarrassment. Passengers nearby peered over, some with puzzled expressions. One or two started whispering to each other. It was a small scene, but in the cramped environment of an aircraft cabin, it felt humiliatingly large. "It's literally right there," Melody said, her voice strained with an attempt at composure. She pointed to the unoccupied lavatory behind Lauren. "I won't take long. I promise." Lauren jutted her chin forward. "I'd strongly suggest you use the other one," she insisted coldly. Then, in a lower tone, she muttered words that made Melody's ears burn. "We have certain standards for these sections." Rage flashed through Melody. She felt tears pricking at the corners of her eyes, not from weakness, but from the shock of blatant discrimination. This was not some subtle microaggression that could be chalked up to a misunderstanding. It was overt. She had heard enough stories, read enough news articles, and seen enough of the world to recognize racism when it stared her in the face. Her father's voice floated in her mind. "We can't fix what we don't see." Well, she was seeing it plainly now. Before she could decide on her next move, Alicia appeared, stepping between them. "Lauren," she said in a careful tone, her eyes darting from Lauren to Melody. "Is there a problem?" Lauren straightened, tension radiating from her rigid posture. "I'm just instructing the passenger to use the forward economy bathroom, as these are currently being cleaned and prepped." Melody glanced behind Lauren. The lavatory was obviously vacant and not being cleaned. Alicia's expression revealed she knew that too. "It's okay," Alicia said gently, turning to Melody. "She can go right ahead. I'll handle it." Lauren's lips parted in protest, but she quickly closed them, her face tight with frustration. She shot Melody a glare before stepping aside. Melody muttered a clipped "thank you" to Alicia and hurried into the lavatory. She was trembling. The sense of being marginalized, treated as though she was somehow unworthy, left a bruise on her spirit. Inside the cramped bathroom, she leaned against the door. Breathing deeply, she tried to regain her composure. She thought of her father and the inclusive, respectful culture he'd fought to create. Clearly, not all employees had adopted those values. Lauren's micro-expressions and subtle hostility pointed to a deeper prejudice simmering beneath the surface. After washing her hands, Melody stepped out quietly. Alicia was still there, while Lauren had moved further up the aisle, rummaging through overhead bins or finding something else to do. Alicia gave Melody an apologetic nod. "I'm so sorry if there was any misunderstanding," she whispered. "Please let me know if you need anything." The sincerity in Alicia's eyes made Melody feel slightly better, but the sting of the encounter still lingered. She forced a small smile. "Thank you." Then she walked back to her seat, heart pounding with conflicting emotions. Safely back in her seat, Melody leaned her head against the window, gazing at the cloud-strewn horizon. The plane soared smoothly over fields and mountains below. But inside her mind, memories came rushing back. She recalled being in 5th grade, singled out by a classmate's parent for wearing her hair in braids. She remembered the humiliating feeling of hearing that parent say, "It's unsanitary to wear hair like that," in front of her entire class. These small but piercing comments had left marks over the years, and even though her father had climbed the ranks of corporate America to become CEO of Delta, incidents of prejudice didn't just vanish. Melody blinked away tears, trying to remind herself that she had nothing to be ashamed of. She was only ashamed for Lauren, for the vile ignorance she displayed. With renewed resolve, Melody decided she wouldn't let that flight attendant's prejudice go unchecked. She recalled how her father had specifically requested she take a genuine flight experience, including a standard seat in economy, no VIP privileges, precisely to see how employees were embodying the kindness-first policy he'd been championing. Melody had promised to deliver honest feedback, but never did she imagine it would come to something like this. It would have been one thing if she'd encountered mild irritations, but to be directly told to use a different bathroom because of certain standards, that was undeniably racist. With her pulse starting to calm, Melody checked her watch. Roughly 3 hours remained until they landed at LAX. That meant more interactions were inevitable. Another round of beverage service, possibly a snack or meal, maybe even more turbulence. She braced herself. Should she confront Lauren? Should she quietly take notes for a formal complaint? Anthony Pearson might be the CEO, but he had always taught Melody that her voice was just as powerful as her father's position, sometimes even more so, because it came from an authentic place, not a corporate office. Right now, she had the power to stand up for herself. But she also wanted to see how far Lauren would take this, or if some resolution could appear organically. As she stared at the seat back in front of her, an idea formed. Melody decided to remain polite and calm, yet she would not let Lauren's behavior go unaddressed if it escalated. She would gather her own observations, speak with Alicia if necessary, and ensure that those in a position to effect change heard about it. Indeed, her father's ears would definitely perk up when she shared her story. In the darkest corners of her mind, she wondered if Lauren was a ticking time bomb, poised to sabotage Delta's reputation. Or was she just one misguided individual who could be redeemed through a wake-up call? Another hour drifted by. Some passengers napped, while others flicked through the in-flight entertainment. The father with the baby gratefully accepted a plastic bottle of warm water from Alicia. The older couple behind Melody oozed with their blankets pulled up to their chins. The flight attendants were back in the galley, likely preparing another round of refreshments or finishing tasks. Suddenly, the pilot's voice buzzed through the cabin speakers again. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been advised of moderate to severe turbulence ahead. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. Cabin crew, please secure the cabin." A ripple of apprehension coursed through the plane. People scrambled to gather their cups, close laptops, return seats to their upright positions. Some, who were trying to use the lavatory, hurried back. Melody rechecked her seatbelt, pulling it snug across her waist. She tried to keep her breathing steady. The turbulence arrived swiftly, rocking the plane more violently than before. Overhead compartments rattled. A few gasps sounded from nervous passengers. Through the intercom, the co-pilot repeated instructions for everyone to remain seated. The flight attendants rushed to stow the carts and secure loose items. Melody watched the seatbelt sign overhead glow a stern orange, flickering in step with the plane's jarring lurches. As the turbulence persisted, it felt like a miniature roller coaster in the sky. 1 minute, the plane dropped slightly, causing stomachs to lurch. Then it steadied before another sudden dip. A child across the aisle whimpered, clutching a stuffed toy. Melody swallowed hard, reminding herself that commercial aircraft are designed to withstand intense turbulence. Lauren's voice now came over the PA. "Flight attendants, be seated." The remaining flight attendants scrambled for jump seats. Alicia rushed to strap in near the rear. Lauren took the seat closest to the cockpit. Meanwhile, the lights flickered and the cabin trembled. The tension was palpable, like an invisible current of fear running through the rows of passengers. Melody tried to focus on calm thoughts, reminding herself of her father's words about flying. The plane wants to fly. Turbulence is just nature's little test. She found a measure of comfort in the memory, but the physical reality of the jostling was unavoidable. Despite the fear, a part of her mind still replayed the bathroom incident, the way Lauren had singled her out. Perhaps that was because fear can awaken deeply stored emotions. She felt both vulnerability and anger coexisting. Here she was, thousands of feet above the ground, forced to trust the pilot and crew for safety, one of whom had just disrespected her humanity. Melody closed her eyes and took a slow breath, forcing her mind to shift to more pressing matters, surviving the turbulence, hoping everyone would remain calm, especially the more anxious passengers. For now, that overshadowed everything else. After what felt like an eternity, though it was perhaps only 20 minutes, the turbulence diminished. The plane leveled out, and the seatbelt sign eventually dinged off. A collective swing of relief spread through the cabin, followed by scattered applause. The flight attendants resumed their duties, checking on passengers who might have been shaken up. Alicia walked through the aisles with a reassuring smile, offering water and comfort to anyone visibly rattled. Then a moment of alarm. A passenger at the front of Melody's cabin section suddenly shot up, pressing the call button repeatedly. He was an older man, maybe in his 70s, wearing a light blue polo shirt. His face was pale and drenched in sweat. The woman next to him, presumably his wife, fanned him urgently, tears welling in her eyes. Alicia hurried to their row. Melody sat up, trying to see over the seats. The older man clutched his chest, gasping for air, mumbling words that didn't carry across the rows. Alarmed murmurs filled the air as nearby passengers realized something was wrong. Alicia quickly called into the PA. "Is there a doctor or medical professional on board? We have a passenger in need of assistance." Heads turned, scanning for anyone who might stand up. A few anxious seconds passed. Then a tall man in a black hoodie raised his hand. "I'm an EMT," he said, stepping into the aisle and swiftly making his way forward. Lauren emerged from the front galley, her expression suddenly serious. She slipped on a pair of disposable gloves and grabbed the plane's emergency medical kit. The man introduced himself as Mark, explaining his experience as a paramedic. Alicia and Lauren knelt beside the passenger, who was clutching his chest, eyes wide with panic. The tension soared. Melody felt her own heart beating rapidly, hoping they could stabilize the man. She craned her neck to watch. Through snatches of conversation, she caught the man's wife saying he had a heart condition and that he felt intense pressure in his chest, possibly triggered by the turbulence and anxiety. Together, Mark, Alicia, and Lauren began administering basic first aid. They asked the passenger questions about his medication and medical history, requesting the wife retrieve his pills from the carry-on bag. Lauren's face was focused, professional, far from the scornful expression she had given Melody earlier. In crisis mode, Lauren was calm and efficient. Melody realized the complexity of human nature in that moment. Here was Lauren, clearly harboring a prejudiced streak, yet demonstrating capable, even compassionate skill in a medical emergency. Did she reserve empathy only for certain people? Or was this a reflection of her training overriding her personal biases? Meanwhile, Mark checked the passenger's pulse, encouraging him to breathe slowly. Alicia provided oxygen from a portable cylinder, sliding the mask over his nose and mouth. The man's breathing slowly steadied, and color crept back into his cheeks. The wife clutched his hand, tears streaming down her face as she watched. Lauren spoke calmly into her handheld radio. "Captain, passenger's vitals stabilizing. We'll keep you updated." Then she gently patted the man's shoulder. Melody watched in astonishment. Lauren's bedside manner, so to speak, was surprisingly gentle. It was almost like seeing a different person from the one who had refused Melody a bathroom earlier. After a tense 15 minutes, the older man's condition improved enough that he could speak and sip water. Alicia guided him into a more comfortable position, while Lauren documented the incident details. Mark, the EMT, remained close, monitoring his status. A wave of relief washed over the cabin. Some passengers clapped again, thankful for Mark's quick action and the flight attendant's coordination. Melody felt her own chest relax. It was reassuring to see that in moments of crisis, many individuals, Lauren included, could rise above daily prejudices to help someone in need. But that didn't erase or excuse what had happened earlier. With the medical scare subsiding, passengers gradually returned to their seats. Lauren escorted the older man and his wife to an empty row near the front for easier monitoring. Alicia carried on distributing water and checking on other passengers. Eventually, the atmosphere calmed enough for the flight to continue without further alarm. The pilot announced they would be landing in Los Angeles in about 2 hours. Melody felt a certain weight in the pit of her stomach. She wanted to confront Lauren. She wanted to stand up for herself. On the other hand, she was aware that flight attendants had a stressful job, especially after a turbulent scare and a medical emergency. Maybe it was better to wait until after landing to address the matter. But the memory of that humiliating back bathroom moment burned too fiercely. Confronting Lauren in a measured way could be a teachable moment, if done right. As if reading her mind, Alicia appeared in the aisle, doing a quick pass to see if anyone needed anything. Melody gently motioned for her attention. "Hi," Melody whispered as Alicia approached. "Are you free to talk for a moment?" Alicia nodded, offering a polite smile. "Yes, of course. Let me check if the galley is free." She motioned for Melody to follow her to the rear galley, away from most passengers. Once there, Alicia kept her voice low. "Is everything all right?" Melody inhaled, deciding to speak calmly. "I want to report something that happened earlier with Lauren. She wouldn't let me use the lavatory, said I wasn't allowed to use it, even though it was clearly open. It made me feel singled out, Like it was because I'm black. Alicia's eyes widened with evident concern and regret. I'm so sorry that happened. I noticed some tension but didn't realize it was that serious. It was humiliating, Melody admitted. She basically implied I wasn't good enough for the bathroom in the back, telling me to use another one. When I tried to ask why, she said, "We have certain standards for these sections." Alicia's face blanched. That's completely unacceptable. I really apologize on behalf of our crew. That is not how we do things at Delta. She paused, swallowing. Lauren's a good flight attendant in many respects, but I've seen glimpses of attitude problems here and there. Nothing so overt, though. Melody sighed, relieved to have some empathy. I appreciate your apology. I just wanted you to know that kind of behavior is hurtful. Honestly, I'm planning to file a formal complaint. Alicia nodded, voice hushed. You absolutely have the right to do that. If you'd like, I can help you get in touch with the in-flight supervisor once we land, or provide any documentation you need. That would be great, Melody said softly. I don't want to cause a scene, but I can't let it go. I understand. Alicia offered a gentle pat on Melody's arm. Let's keep the peace until we land. You deserve respect, and I promise I'll stand by you. Melody gave a small nod of gratitude, a twinge of relief in her chest. Thank you. Their conversation was interrupted by a short beep from Alicia's intercom, a request from the front of the aircraft. Alicia squeezed Melody's hand and whispered, "We'll handle this the right way," before hurrying off. Melody returned to her seat, pulse still elevated, but feeling a bit more in control. Time inched by slowly for Melody. She listened to music on her phone and tried to distract herself from replaying the bathroom confrontation over and over in her mind. Meanwhile, Lauren continued her duties up and down the aisle, handing out headphones, collecting trash, or helping passengers with overhead bins. Melody noticed Lauren's interactions with others were polite but clipped, lacking genuine warmth. A pattern emerged. Lauren seemed more attentive to older white passengers, often offering them small kindnesses or extra courtesy. With younger or ethnically diverse travelers, her tone was impersonal or outright dismissive. Melody caught the father with the baby, giving Lauren a tired glance when she breezed past them without offering to heat the baby's bottle or ask if they needed anything. Moments later, she saw Lauren making a special effort to check on a white-haired man in a sweater vest, even offering him an extra blanket unprompted. The subtlety was maddening, but in Melody's eyes, it was undeniably real. She recalled a conversation with her father. Racism isn't always about vile language or obvious actions. Sometimes it's about who gets the small courtesies and who doesn't. That was exactly what she was witnessing. Soon enough, the pilot announced they would begin their initial descent into Los Angeles. The flaps extended, the engine pitch changed, and the familiar downward tilt of the plane signaled they were not far from landing. Melody peered out the window, glimpsing the sprawl of the city below, roads and buildings glimmering under the afternoon sun. This was usually the best part of any trip for her, that sense of approaching a new place or returning to a familiar one. But this time, anxiety overshadowed the excitement of arrival. She wondered if she should approach Lauren directly before deplaning. Part of her just wanted to slip away and file the complaint privately, letting corporate channels handle the matter. Another part of her yearned for closure. She wanted Lauren to know she was the CEO's daughter and see the look on her face. But was that wise? Wouldn't it cause a scene in front of other passengers, overshadowing the larger lesson? Melody's phone buzzed as the plane dipped lower, still connected to in-flight Wi-Fi. A text from her father read, "Hope flight is going well. See you soon. Love you." Her heart clenched. She typed a brief reply. "Love you too. I have a story to tell." Then she set her phone to airplane mode, bracing for the final approach. The landing was smooth, the plane touching down on the LAX runway with a gentle thump. A few minutes later, the aircraft taxied to the gate. The seatbelt sign switched off, and people stood to retrieve their bags from the overhead compartments. The typical chaos of arrival ensued. Phones dinging, seatbelts unclicking, passengers impatiently jostling to exit. Melody remained in her seat, letting the row ahead of her clear. When it was her turn, she rose and collected her carry-on from under the seat. Clutching her phone, she made her way down the aisle. Lauren was standing near the doorway, bidding farewell to the disembarking passengers. Melody's heart raced. This was her chance, an opportunity to at least let Lauren see that her prejudice wouldn't go unnoticed. The question was, how? She took a deep breath and stepped forward in line. The older couple from behind her had already gone, the father with the baby still behind her. When Melody reached the aircraft door, she locked eyes with Lauren for a split second. She noticed Lauren's stiff, professional smile fade the moment she recognized Melody. Without a word, Lauren turned her attention to the next passenger, as if Melody were invisible. Something inside Melody snapped. She paused, letting the passenger behind her move around, momentarily clogging the exit. Then she turned fully toward Lauren and said in a steady, clear voice, "I'd like to speak with you, Ms. Reed." Lauren's eyes flickered with annoyance, and she forced another mechanical smile. "Certainly," she said, stepping aside. "If you'd please step into the jet bridge so others can pass." Melody walked a few paces ahead onto the jet bridge, finding a small alcove near the wall. Lauren followed, posture rigid. The exiting passengers cast curious glances but hurried on. Once they were out of immediate earshot, Melody turned to her. "I don't appreciate how you treated me during this flight." Lauren feigned ignorance, her lips curving in a dismissive smirk. "I'm afraid I don't know what you mean." "I think you do," Melody said firmly. "You told me to use a different bathroom, even though the one I approached was perfectly fine. You said something about certain standards, implying I didn't meet them." Lauren's eyes narrowed. "I was just enforcing airline policies. We have certain sections." "Stop lying!" Melody interrupted, anger spilling into her voice. "I'm not some clueless traveler. I've flown enough times to know those bathrooms are for everyone in economy. There's no separate policy. You singled me out because I'm black, plain and simple." Lauren rolled her eyes, her feigned politeness crumbling. "Look, I was doing my job. If you have a problem, take it up with corporate." A wave of satisfaction coursed through Melody, though her anger still simmered. "Don't worry," she said. "I will. Also, I'd like you to know exactly who I am." She paused for a heartbeat, letting her words linger. "I'm Melody Pearson. My father is Anthony Pearson, the CEO of Delta Airlines." A flicker of shock crossed Lauren's face, quickly replaced by forced incredulity. "Right," she said in a sarcastic tone, as if she didn't believe it. Melody calmly pulled out her phone and showed Lauren her contact screen. At the top was Anthony Pearson's name and photo, Delta Airlines official press images used by some publications. Lauren's face went white. The realization dawned with a force that erased her dismissive attitude. Lauren started, fumbling for words. "I didn't realize. I thought, that's the problem, isn't it?" Melody said, eyes glistening. "You didn't treat me like a human being worthy of respect. You treated me like I was somehow beneath your standards." And now that you know who I am, suddenly you care." Lauren's face flushed with embarrassment and fear. She opened her mouth, perhaps to apologize or to deny. But no coherent words came out. In that moment, Alicia appeared at the mouth of the jet bridge, calling Melody's name. When she spotted Lauren, she hesitated. "Is everything okay here?" Melody nodded, inhaling deeply. "Yes, Alicia. I was just finishing up a conversation." The slight tremor in Lauren's hands gave her away. She realized the gravity of the situation. This was no idle complaint. Offending the CEO's daughter? The ramifications could be severe. Melody gave Lauren a final, level look. "Maybe next time, you'll think twice before deciding who gets basic respect. If my father has taught me anything, it's that every passenger matters, and that includes black girls traveling on their own." She turned on her heel and walked away, Alicia close behind, offering a comforting hand on Melody's shoulder. Lauren stood rooted to the spot, her world seemingly unraveling. The corridor led Melody into the terminal, where the bustle of LAX greeted her. She spotted her father's tall figure waiting near a column, wearing a casual blazer and a warm smile. The sight of him brought a rush of reassurance, as if stepping back into a realm where she was not merely an anonymous passenger, but a cherished daughter. As soon as Melody saw her father, tears of relief sprang forth. Anthony Pearson's arms enveloped her in a hug. "Melly," he whispered, using her childhood nickname. "I missed you. How was the flight?" Melody glanced around, noticing some onlookers. She bit her lip and said quietly, "Let's go somewhere private. I need to tell you everything." He nodded, guiding her through the terminal to an airport lounge reserved for Delta staff and VIPs. Upon entering the sleek, modern space, they settled in a quiet corner with plush chairs. Anthony ordered them each a soda from the lounge attendant, then turned to Melody expectantly. "All right, tell me what happened." Melody described the flight in detail, the initial tension with Lauren, the humiliating bathroom incident, the conversation at the end where she revealed her identity. Anthony listened quietly, his expression shifting from concern to anger to disappointment. When she finished, he sighed heavily, leaning back in his chair. "I'm so sorry you had to experience that, Melly," he said, voice laced with both sorrow and a simmering rage. "That's not what Delta stands for. That's not what I'm trying to build." She reached out and took his hand. "I know that, Dad, but clearly not everyone got the memo about treating passengers with respect. She looked me up and down like I was trash." Anthony shook his head, eyes clouded. "We've been conducting countless diversity and inclusion trainings. We've revised policies, improved our hiring practices, tried to create a culture of accountability. But we can't fix hearts overnight." Melody nodded, the exhaustion of the day weighing on her. "I plan to file a formal complaint. Alicia, another flight attendant, is willing to corroborate. She saw what happened." Anthony's jaw tightened. "Do it. I'll personally oversee the investigation. This kind of behavior is grounds for disciplinary action, potentially termination, especially if it's proven to be racially motivated." Melody let out a slow breath. "I don't want to be vindictive, but I can't just let her get away with it. She's going to treat other passengers like that if no one stops her." Anthony squeezed her hand gently. "You're doing the right thing. We'll follow proper protocol. The company will investigate thoroughly. If Lauren is indeed acting with prejudice, she'll face the consequences." Their conversation shifted to calmer tones as Melody updated him on her life, upcoming classes, and summer plans. But underlying everything was the residue of anger and sadness. She realized that no matter how far she or her father ascended in society, the shadow of racism persisted. 2 days later, Melody was at her father's home in the Los Angeles Hills, a sprawling but tastefully designed property. She was flipping through channels on the living room TV when her phone buzzed. An email notification from Delta Airlines, subject line, "Investigation Follow-up." She opened it, her pulse quickening. The email explained that an internal review had been launched regarding her complaint. Statements were taken from the crew members, including Alicia and Lauren, as well as a few passengers who were asked about the incident. The initial findings suggested that Lauren had demonstrated conduct unbecoming of a Delta representative and displayed overt bias. Pending a formal hearing, she was suspended without pay. Melody exhaled slowly. A swirl of emotions ran through her: relief, sadness, vindication, regret. Regardless of Lauren's wrongdoing, it wasn't pleasant to think of someone losing their job. But then she remembered that sting of humiliation, how deeply it cut. If Lauren wasn't stopped, more passengers would be subjected to her prejudice. That evening at dinner, Melody filled her father in on the email. Anthony nodded grimly. "It's the right move," he said. "We have a zero-tolerance policy. Lauren's had a few complaints in the past, but nothing quite this overt. This might be the tipping point for corporate to let her go." Melody fiddled with her napkin, nodding slowly. "I guess so. I hope she learns something from this. Hating people just seems so exhausting." Anthony reached across the table, resting a hand on hers. "You have a good heart, Melly. But remember, it's not your job to educate or fix her. She needs to face the consequences of her actions." Melody forced a small smile, though her mind churned. She pictured Lauren's face at the end of the flight, the realization that she had offended the CEO's daughter. Maybe it was petty to relish that moment, but she couldn't deny it brought her a cathartic sense of justice. Over the following week, local news outlets picked up the story. Reports circulated on social media about a Delta flight attendant allegedly discriminating against a black passenger who turned out to be the CEO's daughter. Some details were exaggerated or distorted, typical internet rumor mill, but enough truth was there to spark heated discussions about racism in the airline industry. Delta's PR team attempted to keep the story contained, emphasizing their dedication to equitable treatment for all passengers. But the damage was done. Employees at Delta who recognized Melody's name from internal communications also chimed in with stories of Lauren's rude behavior. A silent avalanche of complaints from past flights began to surface. During the formal hearing, Lauren's record came under scrutiny. Evidence of microaggressions toward Black and Hispanic passengers dotted her file, mostly minor complaints that never escalated. But now, faced with a high-profile case, management took a hard line. Despite the flight attendant's union representation, Lauren's contract was terminated for violating the airline's code of conduct and ethics policy. She lost her benefits, was barred from reapplying, and found herself blacklisted from other major carriers who got wind of her record. Meanwhile, Alicia was praised for her integrity, and Mark, the EMT passenger, received formal thanks from Delta for assisting the elderly man. Lauren's dismissal was the hard karma Melody had half expected. Part of her found satisfaction in seeing justice served. Another part pitied Lauren, imagining how her life would be upended, losing a stable job, possibly struggling financially, and carrying the stigma of being fired for discriminatory behavior. But prejudice carries consequences, Melody reminded herself. A month later, Melody was packing a bag in her father's house, preparing to move into her college dorm. She had decided to spend a short break in Los Angeles before returning to the East Coast for her sophomore year. Life had moved on, overshadowing the drama of that fateful flight. Yet the lessons lingered. On her last night in Los Angeles, she got a phone call from an unknown number. She hesitated, but picked it up. A halting voice spoke. "Hello. Is this Melody Pearson?" "Yes," she answered cautiously. "It's Lauren Reed." A heavy silence followed. Melody's heart leapt. "How did you get my number?" she asked, keeping her tone guarded. Lauren exhaled audibly. "I reached out to a mutual acquaintance, Alicia, and she reluctantly gave me your number. I hope you don't mind. I needed to talk to you." Melody's mind raced. "I see. Why are you calling?" "I've lost my job," Lauren said, voice trembling. I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I wanted to apologize. I know I was horrible to you, and I'm not trying to get my job back. I just can't live with myself without at least telling you I'm sorry." Melody pressed the phone closer. She could hear the raw desperation in Lauren's voice. "What you did was racist," Melody said bluntly, "telling me I wasn't allowed to use the bathroom, implying I was beneath your standards. That was incredibly hurtful and wrong." Lauren sniffled. "I know. There's no excuse. I grew up in a narrow-minded household. I always felt threatened when I saw more diversity in my workplace. But that doesn't justify anything. It's just explaining where the poison came from." Melody closed her eyes. She recalled the sting of that moment on the plane, but she also believed in the possibility of change. "Apology accepted," she finally said, her voice soft. "But acceptance doesn't erase the consequences." "I understand," Lauren said. "I'm in therapy now, trying to unlearn all the biases. It's terrifying how deep they run. Anyway, I won't take more of your time. I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry, and I'm determined to be a better person." A swirl of emotions eddied in Melody's chest. Compassion, lingering anger, resolve, and relief that Lauren was at least taking steps toward change. "I appreciate that," she said quietly, "and I hope you do learn from this." A few more awkward exchanges of words, and then Lauren ended the call, voice trembling with gratitude. Melody hung up, feeling both lighter and heavier at the same time. Perhaps that was the reality of confronting prejudice. No neat, easy resolution, but a messy journey toward growth. Melody resumed college life, focusing on her studies and extracurricular activities. She carried the memory of the flight with her, using it as motivation to advocate for equality and respect in small ways across her campus. She joined a multicultural club, volunteered at community events, and formed new friendships. Occasionally, she'd cross paths with someone who'd say, "You're the girl from that Delta story, right?" She'd smile humbly and shift the conversation to the importance of standing up for yourself and others. Her father continued his mission at Delta, tightening training protocols, revisiting complaint procedures, ensuring that employees who displayed racial or ethnic bias were swiftly disciplined. The airline's culture kept evolving, step by step. Anthony Pearson never publicly revealed that his own daughter was the victim in the story, but internally, many in the company knew. Lauren's name seldom appeared in conversation again. Rumor had it she moved to a smaller city, took on a job outside of customer service, and was quietly working on her personal demons. Melody only heard snippets through Alicia, who'd occasionally text updates, but she had no desire for further contact. For Melody, that chapter had closed. And yet, in that closure lay the seeds of a greater cause. Melody found new purpose in sharing her story, not as a cautionary tale about revenge, but as an illustration of how prejudice could exist even in places that prided themselves on being progressive. The lesson was that vigilance, advocacy, and sometimes personal courage were necessary to root out discrimination. She never forgot the feeling of being told to use a different bathroom because she was deemed lesser. She never forgot the flush on Lauren's face when confronted with her identity, and she never forgot how Alicia stood up for her in a quiet but powerful show of solidarity. These were the episodes that shaped her, the building blocks of empathy, resilience, and a fierce determination to use her voice. Sometimes the journey is about more than just reaching a destination. It's about confronting the harsh truths we encounter along the way. Melody's flight started as a simple trip, but it became a life-changing lesson in how insidious prejudice can surface and how powerful it is to stand against it. No matter our status or background, each of us has a responsibility to call out injustice when we see it. Thanks for tuning into this story. If it resonated with you, if you believe in standing up for what's right, for treating every person with respect and dignity, please hit that like button, share the video with friends, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps spread awareness of real-life issues that still persist today, and together we can keep working toward a world where everyone is truly valued. Let's make that journey, one flight at a time.